How to piss off a judge in just 4 pages. Judge Boesberg. Chief Judge Boesberg of the D.C. Court is not going to be happy, not one bit, with a new filing that was just made by the Department of Justice and Noem, basically telling Chief Judge Boesberg, who just restarted his criminal contempt proceedings against the Department of Justice and others in the administration for violating judge's temporary restraining order in the middle of March, which said that people could not be sent to El Salvador without due process, without writs habeas. Corpus rights turned the planes around, ground the planes, and we know that the Trump administration ignored the judge's orders and sent them to the killer prisons of El Salvador anyway. And the judge started a criminal contempt proceeding in April. He issued probable cause that there had been criminal contempt in the violation of his order. Later, the United States Supreme Court overturned his underlying order, but not before the Trump administration had already aided that order. And you're not allowed to violate an order hoping that one day gets overturned by the United States Supreme Court. So the Judge Boesberg told both sides, the American Civil Liberties Union representing the JG, the group of 200 men from Venezuela sent to El Salvador without due process, and the Trump administration. Well, I reported yesterday that the ACLU said, "We got an Arasi problem, Your Honor. It's like Kaiser Soze in that great movie, right? So you've got a Kaiser Soze moment. What is it? Our revenue worked for 15 years in the Department of Justice. He was at the highest levels in the Immigration Litigation Division. The day he got a promotion was the day that Emil Boye, according to Ars Reveni. Emil Boye now in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, but then Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer told him and others in the room to F judges. Tell him to go F off and to not comply with federal judges' orders and to get people out of the country under the Alien Enemies Act." Ars Reveni famously wrote a 38-page whistleblower complaint. It was reviewed by committees when Emil Boye was up for his Third Circuit Court of Appeals. Judge promotion. He denied it. Emil Boye, I don't remember ever using that particular Ford or F-bomb at that particular moment. And he got confirmed. A CLU said, "We need Emil Boye. We need Ars Reveni to testify in the case, Your Honor, about criminal contempt, because now we know the reason that your orders were flouted and violated. Now we know the reason that other federal judges like Judge Zenas had her orders violated because Emil Boye told him to. And now they're trying to get Emil Boye out of the mix." And the Department of Justice has said, no, it was Kristi Noem. Puppy killer. Puppy killer did it. And she did it under the advice of lawyers, and we're not going to really tell you what that advice was. Yeah, judge is not going to be pleased about it. Let me read to you here. You're here on Legal AF Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Thanks for being with us. We're going to crack that 1 million barrier. We're going to hit 970,000 subscribers the next day. And I think we're going to hit 1 million at this rate, right before Christmas with your help. And that gives us the street cred we need to bring in the ACLU, the Democracy Forwards for interviews, former federal judges, and the commentary that you've come to expect to rely upon Legal AF. Let's get to what the Department of Justice just filed late last night. Of course, they waited to see what the ACLU was going to file. Cowards. The ACLU said, "Judge Ars Reveni, you need to hear from Aris Reveni about his whistleblower complaint. And Emil Boye, who's now on the federal appellate court, but you need to pull him in. Think about this. The optics that we have here, think about this. A trial court judge is going to call an appellate court judge, not his boss, because he's in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and that's not Judge Boesberg's bosses, but he's going to pull him in as a witness for what he did several months ago when he was in the Department of Justice. So here's what they say in their complaining, crying, bleeding of a response. It says that defendants' response to court order, defendants respectfully submit that no further steps are warranted in the criminal contempt proceeding. They then rely on an appellate decision that was in their favor with Judge Katz's, who's a Trumper. Insofar as the court continues to disagree, defendants identify below the officials who made and advised on the decision not to recall the flights in transit and instead to transfer the detainees out of U.S. custody on March 15th and 16th, already lying to the federal judge, already lying to a federal judge. We know from the timeline that the planes some of them had not yet left domestic airspace. And even if they had, there was an ability to turn them around. And Drew Ensign, who effectively lied to the federal judge, said, "I don't really know what's going on with the plague, Your Honor. Can't get anybody on the phone as they were flying off." Now we know why. Because there was a meeting a couple of days earlier that Drew Ensign attended, along with Ezra Revenai and Amal Boy came in and said, "Tell federal judges to F off and don't tell him what's going on with the planes." Hello. The moon affects the tides, and now we know who the moon is. The big fat moon is Emil Boy and I guess Christine Noem. So then they go off in their filing and they say the following on page 2. At approximately 6,445, the court orally directed counsel for the government to inform his clients of the court's oral directives at the hearings, including statements that the men needed to be returned to the United States. And I think this is a lie based on the timeline. 2 flights carrying individuals designated under the Alien Enemies Act had already departed from the United States and were outside airspace for the U.S. I don't think that's true. I don't think the judge is going to find out that's not true. Here's where they throw Kristi Noem under the bus in paragraph 4. So you already got Emily Emil Boy. She's getting thrown under the bus. And now you got Kristi Noem. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche and Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General Emil Boy. Well, former, he's now a judge. Provided DHS Department of Homeland Security with legal advice about the flights, including General Counsel Joseph Mazzara of the Department of Homeland Security. Mazzara then conveyed the legal advice as well as his own to Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem. After receiving the legal advice, Secretary Noem directed that the Alien Enemy Act detainees who had been removed from the United States before the court's order could be transferred to El Salvador. They also complain at the end that I don't think most of that is not true. The Kristi part is probably true. They then said on paragraph 11 on page 4, defendants do not believe any further facts are relevant to the court's potential referral. Don't look at the whistleblower complaint for 38 pages for Arasi. In fact, just to remind you about Ezra Revenai, who's going to testify, I am sure, before Judge Boesberg, here's a clip from him on 60 Minutes. The Alien Enemies Act allows rapid expulsion from the U.S. of the citizens of enemy nations during a war. But without a declared war, Trump used it against more than 100 Venezuelans that the government said were terrorists. They were to be denied their right to be heard by a judge. Revenai says Boy expected a challenge. Boy emphasized those planes need to take off no matter what. And then, after a pause, he also told all in attendance, and if some court should issue an order preventing that, we may have to consider telling that court you. And when you heard that, you thought what? Felt like a bomb had gone off. Here is the number 3 official using expletives to tell career attorneys that we may just have to consider disregarding federal court orders. And here's a clip from Emma Emil Boya in which he denies, or sort of denies, using the F-bomb in that particular meeting. How convenient during his confirmation hearing to become a federal judge. Let's play the Bo clip. In the complaint, it says Bouvet stated that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts, "Fuck you," and ignoring any such court order. Did you say anything of that kind in the meeting? Senator, I have no recollection of saying anything of that kind to the extent I would you recall, Mr. Bob? If you said or suggested during a meeting with Justice Department lawyers that maybe they should consider telling the court, "Fuck you." It seems to me that would be something you'd remember unless that's the kind of thing you say frequently. Well, I've certainly said things encouraging litigators at the department to fight hard for valid positions that we have to take in defense. And have you frequently suggested that they say, you and ignore court orders? Is that also something you frequently do? Such you might not remember doing it in this occasion? No, and as I explained, I've never direct. Did you or did you not make those comments during that meeting? Which comment, Senator? You really need me to repeat it? Did you suggest, as Mr. Revenai wrote, that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts, "Fuck you," and ignore any such court order? I did not suggest that there would be any need to consider ignoring court orders. At the point of that meeting, there were no court orders to discuss. Well, did you suggest telling the courts, "Fuck you," in any manner? I don't recall. You just don't remember that. Now, they say at the very end, like a toss-away argument, that the ACLU and the plaintiffs shouldn't even be involved. I just interviewed Lee Gallert, who's the lawyer representing the American Civil Liberties Union, about this very issue. Oh no, it's beneath the court. This is a court issue about sanctions, about contempt, and the plaintiffs have no role here. It would be inappropriate for an interested party to essentially be conducting a criminal investigation on behalf of the court. Now, what happens with the criminal referral? Let me answer that question. It's come up a couple of times because who's the judge going to refer it to? The Department of Justice? Not exactly. If a judge believes this is under case law, if a judge believes that the Department of Justice is so conflicted, like Pam Bondi, that they will not appoint a special counsel as is required by congressional rules, the Code of Federal Regulation, Department of Justice Manual and Law, the judge can do it. Judge to assist the judge can appoint another officer of the court in order to prosecute a criminal contempt proceeding. So for those that think, and the Department of Justice has been heard to argue who's going to prosecute it, we'll tell you right now, judge will never prosecute this, right? And that's the very reason you need an independent special counsel to do it. And Judge Boesberg has the power to do it. Now, they're busy bashing Boesberg. Oh, he's the judge, is the chief judge that allowed those subpoenas to go out for the phone records of the senators and Congress people about whether they were in cahoots and colluding with the Yon Sixers to avoid the peaceful transfer of power. Yeah, that's true because he's the chief judge of D.C. He presides over all grand jury proceedings. Oh, he's a radical. He's a moderate conservative Republican at best that was appointed by both Democrats and Republicans to the panel. He's a friend of John Roberts. He was a roommate of Brett Kavanaugh. Of all things in law school, they're barking up the wrong tree, and they're peeing down the wrong judge's leg. I guess that's the right way to put it. I'll continue to follow it and these new developments. The next person to be heard from will be Chief Judge Boesberg. I'll update you here over the Thanksgiving weekend on either Legal AF YouTube or the Substack, where I can do live reporting on Substack Live. Become a member here. Become a subscriber for free on Legal AF YouTube. Help us crack the 1 million subscriber barrier, and then we'll all be together and celebrating the fact that we've got the street cred to be one-stop shopping for all things law and politics here on Legal AF. So, until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. And I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touches Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building up what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years. So my own law firm, organically building on my Legal AF work, just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok firm today at 1-877-POPCAF or by visiting my website at www.thepopfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm fighting for your justice every step of the